Hello, welcome to Matt's Garage. Today I'm going to be changing the outer tie rod end on my 2004 PT Cruiser. Process should be the same for any year of PT Cruiser. The first thing you want to do, of course, is confirm that your tie rod end is indeed at fault. So normally signs that your tie rod end may be at fault. You might hear a clunk or a rattle when you go over bumps. You may have a lot of slack in your steering wheel, and you may have abnormal tire wear. So I'm not really experiencing any of those symptoms. I actually just noticed when I was doing an inspection, I've already had this wheel off. I know this tie rod's bad. I know it's the outer tie rod, and I know the inner one's still good. So when I get in there, I'll just show you what's going on and what we're going to do to fix it. So I'm just going to show you how to physically check your tie rod end now, whether your car's experiencing symptoms or not. Basically, you just grab your tire on both sides firmly, have the car jacked up or some weight lifted off of it is best so that you don't have the friction of the tire on the ground fighting you, and then you can really feel if there's play in it. Of course, if you moved it really hard, you could force your steering to move a bit, but that's different. We're just checking for loose play here. So there is some loose play there. I don't know if you can hear it, but there is a bit of a clunk. You do want to check top to bottom now just to confirm that the play isn't in something else like the wheel bearing or the control arm or the strut plate, something like that. And in this case, I know for a fact it's actually the outer tie rod end that's at fault because I've already had this wheel off before. I've gone ahead and got a part already, but I'll just pop this wheel off now and show you how you'd check further to confirm where exactly the play is coming from. Okay, here we are. We've got the wheel off, and you can see these actually have been changed before, and I know that because, well, one, I know what the OEM part looks like, and this ain't it. And also they had a little shield around them right here, and somebody neglected to put that back on, which is a little annoying, and I have to check my parts stash and see if I have a couple, because I like to have those on there actually. So you just want to move it around, kind of manhandle it, and feel for not only slack but stiff areas, and that'll tell you if that joint's bad. This one, you can see I actually just greased it, and that's why it feels better than it is, but I know before I greased it, it had quite a bit of play in it. You just want to confirm that the play is there and not there, because this is the inner tie rod end here on this end. And so you want to rotate it back and forth and in and out and just feel on that end for any play. In this case, I'm pretty confident that's in good shape still. So I'm going to go ahead and wire wheel these rusty threads here, get some oil on there, and get that all broken loose. I'm just going to be using a 3-inch wire wheel on my drill to clean up those threads there. Okay, now what we're actually going to do is I'm going to put some 3-in-1 oil on that. Works really good for this kind of thing, but first I'm going to take my torch and I'm just going to heat it up a little bit. Not getting that too hot, just warm. And then I drip a little bit of oil in there, and what it will happen is it will suck right down into the threads there. The heat will pull it in. See, I'll put a little bit there. It will suck into that joint and break that free as well. And then this is actually 22 millimeter. And then you just put a big adjustable on this part here. There we go. You can see how easily that broke loose. Just going to back that jam nut off a little bit. Now this one, it did have a cotter pin in it. Normally they're nylock if they're the OEM ones. They have a nylock lock nut, so you can just spin it right off. I recommend cleaning and oiling the threads first. So that is, it's normally 19 if it's OEM, but again, somebody replaced it, so now it's 18. Okay, now I'm betting, because I just had this off the other day, I could take a hammer and just smack the stud and it would pop right up. But if it was stuck in any worse than that, the tool I would use is this. What you do is you hammer it in there under the boot, and it presses against this downward, and then this part fits over the stud and it'll press the stud up through when you tighten this bolt down. You can also use a Pickle Fork, which is a long bar with it's basically got the same deal as that on the end, and it's a wedge, so you hammer it under there. But the only thing with it is because it's moving and it's applying force to that boot, you're going to tear up the boot. So that's why I really like this, because this tool does it with no damage. So now, like I say, you want to move that all around like that, and just check if there's any play in that inner one there. There's not. So now, as for alignment, I do have a video on how to do an alignment at home on your vehicle. Most people, if they're replacing tie rod ends, what they'll do is they'll either count how many turns, or you can just, I've backed that lock nut off about 3 turns, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the new one on until it's about 3 turns away from that lock nut, then put the lock nut on there, and then I will go ahead and just use my method of checking wheel alignment to check it when I'm done. Of course, it's also an option to take your car in and get a professional wheel alignment done to it, which is probably the recommended process, but not something I often do. So I've sourced my new part from Napa. There's the part number. It's actually their second line. It's what they had in stock, and it was about 20 bucks. So there's what we've got. It doesn't have a grease nipple on it. It's just a sealed unit. Well, okay guys, as luck would have it, I happen to have one of those shields I was talking about, so there it is, and that just goes on just like that, and the tie rod drops right through it and holds it in place. And we're just going to, we'll just do a side-by-side comparison here. We'll go with there. We can always adjust it later. You don't have to have this apart to adjust that. Now what I normally do, just to make it easy to tighten the nut up, often they'll have like a hex on the end so you can hold it with a wrench and use another wrench to tighten it or whatever. But what I find works best is just to set it on the taper. So what I do is I'll just give it a couple firm whacks. And what that does is it sets the taper and locks that shaft so that you can get your nut tight and it won't spin. Well, it appears the nut that came with this part is actually 11/16 instead of being metric, so that was kind of annoying because I had to go to my toolbox and find a socket. I had all the appropriate metric sockets out here on hand, so we'll just get that jam nut tightened down. And so if you've got this end connected and you need to move this in or out, you can actually use this spline here and some vice grips, and you can turn that inner tie rod in and out in the outer one, and that'll adjust it in and out to set your toe in. Okay, so I've got my jam nut snugged up really nice and tight there now. I don't normally follow torque specs, to be honest, when I'm doing things like this. I kind of have a sense for where to torque it down. So I'm going to include the torque specs. I'll put a caption for them. So now we'll put our cotter pin in. So if your cotter pin holes don't line up, you always go tighter. You never loosen it. You never back it off to line it up. Okay, and I'm going to show you the proper way to bend a cotter pin here. Most people think you bend them side to side, and you don't. You take the long side, you bend it up over the top of the stud, and you take the short side and you bend it down the side of the nut. And what I normally do is I'll take a hammer and I'll kink it right in there. And if you're real fussy, you can cut the excess off. It doesn't much matter here. So there you go, that's what you're aiming for right there. As I said, you can cut off the excess ends. They're normally a little long, but that's the proper way to install a cotter pin. The install's all complete here. Pretty basic little job. The only additional step you might have to take is if it wasn't a sealed unit, you'd have to install the grease nipple and pump about 3 or 4 pumps of grease into it just to make sure the new parts lubricate it. Since this is a sealed unit, it should be good to go. So I hope you found the video helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and have yourself a great day.